Well, the week's not even finished yet, and it's been quite a week for politics in our country, hasn't it? Well, opposition parties making it very clear they thought it was unacceptable about the Phala Phala farm theft by the President Cyril Ramaphosa when he was supposed to answer questions. They weren't happy at all about that. To COPE members showing the entire country why exactly it's not actually coping as a political party. So what does it actually have to say about leadership in South Africa? Well, let's discuss this with regular political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa joining us this morning. Lukhanyo, morning. Good to have you back on eNCA. You and I haven't spoken for a long time. I think let's pick up maybe off the presidential Q&A. There was lots of Qs, not much As from the president. What did you make of the lack of answers?
Well, Gareth, the president is continuing to stonewall these investigations against him. He has taken over 2 months to answer the PP in her investigation. Over 2 months now, he hasn't responded to the Reserve Bank when they're asking about the currency that was found under his mattresses in Phala Phala. And he has done the same thing with Parliament. He has refused to answer questions and be accountable to Parliament. And he has been doing this for over 2 months now as well with Parliament, because the previous, his presidential budget, he refused to answer questions there as well when he tabled that in Parliament. So I think it's time that Parliament took its role seriously, its oversight role over the executive very seriously, and they take the same approach that Zondo took with Jacob Zuma and approach the Constitutional Court to compel the president to both attend the session of Parliament and to answer questions, because the president does not have a legal right not to answer questions and be accountable to Parliament. It's the same thing that was told to Jacob Zuma when he refused to appear and answer before the Zondo Commission. And it's the same thing that will be told to the president, that the right not to incriminate yourself is only a right that is given to people who have been criminally charged, and he hasn't been criminally charged, and therefore he has a constitutional responsibility to answer questions in Parliament.
We can't be that surprised, though, that we saw what was essentially being touted, Lukhanyo, as a protection faction of the president in the National Assembly when the ANC has the numbers. I mean, it wasn't going to go any other way, surely.
Yes, and that's not the way that things are supposed to go, Gareth. We understand that there are politics at play, we understand that there are factions, but there's a limit to what those can be used for and how far they can go. It's something that must be condemned when a cabinet minister can stand up in Parliament and say that the president must just, at a minimum, speak back to Parliament and not really have to answer questions. The president and the executive are accountable to Parliament, and the mechanisms of accountability that have been enshrined in the Constitution are the question and answer sessions. It's the written questions that are placed before the executive by the legislature. And if a cabinet minister can say that they just have to speak back and not necessarily have to answer those questions, then it is disastrous for democracy. It is the most undemocratic utterance that has ever been made in our Parliament since 1994, 28 years ago. And Minister Gungubele must be condemned for those utterances. They are simply unacceptable in a democracy.
So how do we fix this in the National Assembly to compel the president to answer if the Speaker of Parliament is not even forcing that particular issue? But surely it comes down to the Speaker to compel the president to answer the questions.
It's even more disastrous compounded, Gareth, because the Speaker of Parliament is someone that fought for this democracy. It's someone that joined the MK at a very young age and fought for the democracy and the constitutional protections that we have today, that they will be so negligent in the carrying out of those responsibilities is very sad and saddening as well. So what needs to happen now, members of Parliament in their individual or collective capacities need to approach the Court or the High Court on an urgent basis to compel the president to attend the sessions of Parliament and to answer questions that have been placed before him honestly and truthfully on what happened in Phala Phala. Did people get kidnapped? Were they tortured on his private farm? Were they tortured by his bodyguards? Were they tortured in an effort to recover his private monies? If that's the case, then the Parliament then needs to hold him seriously accountable for what happened there.
So let's then change tack quickly and just talk about the coping mechanisms of some of our political parties in this country. It seems when they don't get their way, they don't agree, we get into fisticuffs on national and live television. What is happening at COPE? It seems that COPE doesn't even know what's happening at COPE.
The spiritual father of COPE, President Mbeki, said recently that our society is a very violent society, that when we disagree, we resort to violence to resolve our disagreement, that when you don't agree with Gareth, then Lukhanyo is going to pull out a gun and shoot Gareth and or be violent towards Gareth. It's something that is totally unacceptable. What is transpiring in COPE is a very rapid demise of that political party. Likota is now under suspension. He has suspended those that suspended him, and we don't know who really is leading COPE at this very moment. And with that being said, it's come full circle for Likota. He was suspended in the ANC in 2008 when they were going to form his political party COPE, and full circle now, he's now been suspended in the political party that he was suspended for forming. So it really has come full circle for Likota, and I think he's reached his sell-by date in his political career, and this is the end of Likota, and it's a very ignominious end to what otherwise was a very colorful career, having served as a cabinet minister, having served as chairperson of the ANC, and yeah, that's the end of the road for that political career. And the same can really be said for Willie Madisha, because they really are in the same boat.
Yeah, and the problem is, as that boat is sinking, we have to look ahead to 2024 as well, because they did get relatively good numbers in the last general elections, didn't they, Lukhanyo? There was a lot of people who thought this might be the way to go politically, but do you suspect we'll even see COPE on the ballot paper in 2024?
As things stand, COPE is no longer a viable political brand. Even worse in the past few weeks, what has transpired, and it's a cautionary tale in how not to do politics. And that's for everyone else, with other people that might break away from their own political parties. Action SA, which is a splinter group of the DA, Musi Maimane and those. It's a cautionary tale on how not to do politics. I don't know if they could limp until they get to 2024. However, they've proven themselves to be political, Machiavellians, in that they've been able to get themselves the speaker positions, holding one seat in some of the councils. And if they're able to continue doing that, they might buy themselves some time in terms of relevance until they can be able to get to 2024. And when it comes to 2024, every vote will count, because it's coalition governments, and they might actually find themselves with a role to play in that instance. That's, of course, assuming that they survive what they're currently going through, and it doesn't seem likely that they will.
Yeah, right now the ship is sinking. The question is, can it right itself? I appreciate your time and always speaking to us. Political analyst Lukhanyo Vangqa joining us from Cape Town this morning.